Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today, let's make a gravity ice dye. I'm going to do a double side fan fold shirt. So to begin, I'm going to center the shirt. And this process is going to go pretty fast. But down below this video in the description for this video is a link to another video which shows how to center a shirt. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting both halves of the front of the shirt or the fabric right up next to each other, and the same thing for the back of the shirt. That way, whenever I apply the dye and the shirt is completed, when you look at the front, both sides are going to look similar, and the same thing with the back. Now that the shirt is centered, I'm going to draw an arc on the side of the shirt. And to do that, I'm going to take a washable marker, make a mark just a little bit below the armpit of the shirt, wrap an old piece of sinew around my marker, then place the sinew on the mark that I just drew, and draw an arc on the shirt. This is going to be the line that I'm going to fan fold. You can make this mark or this shape further up the shirt if you want, further down the shirt. It's just kind of a personal preference. Once I have this line fan folded or accordion folded, whichever one you want to call it, I'm going to tie it with some kite string. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to gravity ice dye this shirt. So I really don't want any kind of white lines in the shirt, which would be caused if I use sinew to tie this line with. I would rather allow the dye to flow the complete distance of the shirt without any obstruction. You can go ahead and tie with sinew if you'd like to have the white definition lines. Your dye is going to go ahead and flow, but you just won't have a continuous flow of dye. You're going to have the white lines in your shirt. Once I have the initial line tied with some kite string, I'm going to straighten out the fan folds going out toward what is going to be the center of the fan fold. Then I'm going to tie those folds with some kite string as well. I'm going to straighten the remaining folds just a little bit, but I'm not going to tie it with any kind of kite string. This is the part of the shirt that's going to get gravity dyed. For this shirt, I've decided to use some red and blue colors. We're really close to the 4th of July, so I want something a little bit festive. For my setup, I have a metal shelving rack, which I've taken outside and I placed it under the trees. I have the shirt down at the end of the shelving rack, and I have it as far down toward the end as I can get it without it starting to tip over the edge. The shirt is still damp, but I want it to be really damp. So I'm using some soda ash solution that I've put inside of a spray bottle, and I'm going to spray the shirt down really well. The more damp the shirt is, the better the dye flows down the shirt. So because this is a gravity dye, I really want to encourage that dye to flow. For this shirt, I've chosen Midnight Blue, Sapphire Blue, Fire Red, and Chinese Red, which are all Dharma Trading Company colors. I'm going to start by applying Fire Red right at the very end of the fan fold area. Then I'm also going to do a line of Fire Red on the portion that is untied on the shirt, going vertically instead of horizontally. That is going to hopefully encourage that Fire Red to flow down the shirt. So the reason why I'm applying the dye going different directions is in the fan folded area, I want the dye to be in stripes going with the fan folds or against the fan folds. Then on the area that is gravity dyed, I want the dye to be able to flow down those long folds. So I'm going to place the dye going the other direction. I'm going to skip a part in between the two reds, and I'm going to apply the Chinese red. And then I'm going to do that on the same gravity dyed portion of the shirt as well. In between the two reds, I'm going to place midnight blue. And I'm going to leave just a little bit of a space that is going to be white in between all the colors. But those areas are going to fill in. So instead of it being a red, white, and blue shirt, it's really just going to be a red and blue shirt. You can leave some white on gravity dyes. It's a little bit harder though, especially in the part that's actually getting gravity dyed. So you have to leave much bigger white areas if you're going to try to do that. The last color I'm going to apply is the sapphire blue. Then over the top of the dye, I'm going to add a little bit of additional dry soda ash. I'm adding the dry soda ash even though I've actually soaked the shirt in a soda ash solution because I'm going to apply a lot of ice to the top of this shirt. The key with gravity dyes is you want to force a lot of ice and a lot of liquid through the shirt to pull that dye all the way down to the outer edges of the shirt. So I freeze these large chunks of ice in just any kind of container that I have. This one is an old dip container. And I also use larger like ice chunks, ice cubes that I've made in silicone ice molds. Just any larger chunk of ice works better for me because where I live it is just so hot. If you put little bitty pieces of ice, they're going to be melted in probably 10 minutes. These big chunks of ice, I think it was close to 100 degrees the day that I did this shirt. So I think they were melting in right around an hour, maybe a little bit less time. The other thing about gravity dyes is you don't want them to dry out. So you need to make sure that you are adding enough ice, that the shirt is staying damp enough, and that you catch it once all the ice melts, once your dye is to the edges, and either you put your shirt in something to go ahead and process, or you can go ahead and leave it out. You just need to spray it with a soda ash solution periodically so that it doesn't dry out. As far as how much ice I added quite a few batches of ice to this shirt. As you can see, after the first layer of ice melted, I had quite a bit of undissolved dye, and my dye wasn't all the way to the edge of the shirt, so I added another layer of ice. And I kept doing that until I was happy with the way the shirt looked. Most of the dye was dissolved. The color was all the way to the outer edges of the shirt. And at that point, I actually took my shirt, placed it inside of a plastic tote that had a metal rack down in the bottom. I put the lid on the tote and then I just left it outside. That allowed the shirt to process in the heat without the risk of it drying out, because that lid on the tote kind of keeps all of that moisture inside. It almost kind of steams the shirt too. And I left the shirt probably about 24 hours before I began rinsing it. Because it was as hot as it was, I probably could have rinsed it a little bit sooner, but it didn't hurt to go ahead and leave it. To rinse the shirt, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. And as you can see, the dye's gone through to the backside and down into the portion that was gravity dyed really well. It looks like it's got pretty good color saturation. After rinsing in cold for a while, I went ahead and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I went ahead and untied the shirt, and then instead of rinsing for a long time, I decided to soak the shirt. To do that, I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added some Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside, and allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? Because I think this one looks really fun. I think it would be a great shirt to wear for the 4th of July or any other patriotic holidays. I really like the design. I like the highlighted area for the fan folds. With putting the die the way I did on that area, it really makes that part stand out. But of course, my favorite part of any of the gravity dies is the die flow. So I love the way the die has flowed from the fan fold portion into the center part of the shirt. So when I centered the shirt was basically folded in half. The only difference between just folding a shirt in half and centering a shirt is when you fold a shirt in half, you've got one half of the front of the shirt right up next to one half of the back of the shirt. The fabric from both of those areas are next to each other. When you center a shirt, you have one half of the fabric from the front of the shirt right up next to the other half of the fabric from the front of the shirt. So those are up next to each other. That's the reason why when you look at the back of the shirt and you see the die flow on the back of the shirt, it is very similar on both halves. And the same thing on the front. You know, when I look at the front of the shirt, the die flow on the front is close, but not exactly like the die flow on the back. But I love the way that blue just kind of flows in toward the center and then down, and then the red, the flow of the red. I just think it's really interesting. There is a little bit of yellow in the shirt too, and that's coming out of the fire red. And I know there are other Dharma dyes that maybe don't split with the fire like the fire red does, you know, with the yellow split. But I love the fire red, and I really don't mind that yellow split in the Patriotic tie-dyes that I do. If you're wanting a more pure red, then there are some other ones out there. But I really love fire red. That's kind of my go-to. Fire red, midnight blue are my favorites for Patriotic shirts. So I really love this shirt. I think it's something fun. I think it's something festive. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.